So, welcome to your weekly dose of creativity, episode 2. Today I've got Amanda with me. Amanda, would you like to give yourself a little introduction?
Hello, yes, thank you very much for having me. I'm Amanda and I'm a designer at Wildbirch Studio. I live on the north coast in Northumberland, so I'm surrounded by lots of nature and beauty, which influences a lot of the work that I do. And I work with small eco-friendly businesses on branding and design.
That's amazing. And that sounds, I've seen some of your work and it's absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
At the beginning of every podcast episode, I start with 3 of my own questions and a question from a previous guest.
Okay.
My first question is, what does creativity mean to you?
Such a big question. I think personally, creativity is about maybe making connections. I think it's about connecting ideas and the process behind that, and then sharing them with other people. Thinking and exploring. It doesn't have to always be art. I think people confuse creativity with art, and it's not always the case. I feel like creativity is very broad, and sometimes you're creative with maths and you're problem solving and your logic. Sometimes you're creative when you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, bit of slapdash, trying some new ingredients. I think creativity can cover everybody, and I think everybody can be creative. I really don't think there's ever any limit on that. I think the limit is something that is imposed on yourself if you're not too sure about how to be creative.
Yeah.
And if you think you have to be, maybe you think you have to be creative because you paint or you draw or you write something, but I really don't feel that's the case. I do feel it's more about connections and process, creativity. So yeah, it covers most things, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've always been one that has been like, creativity isn't black and white. It's not you either you are or you're not. It's much.
It's like how you apply it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's not just like I said before, about being a painter or a potter or something, which is creative, absolutely. But I think in essence, creativity is in some ways problem solving or just trying to express an idea or thought, and it's how you then do that to then present to people. So music's also creative. Talking, people do TED Talks, that's quite creative thinking on your feet and chatting, conversations creative. So yeah, it's definitely not a black and white thing. I think it's very, very broad.
Yeah, and like you say, I think people do confuse the artistic with creative because, like, the actual definition of creative is about viewing things from a different perspective, whereas which isn't the definition of artistic at all. So it's like 2 very different things, but there's a lot of overlap between them as well. My second question is, what's your best tip for someone wanting to be more creative?
I think making time for play, making time to play and explore. Maybe remember what you did when you were younger is a really great way to get in touch with it. Because when we're younger, we're very much less inhibited about what we try, what we fail at, and we're happy to fail at as well. I think when we get older, that perfectionism creeps in, and you think, "Oh, it has to be perfect, or I can't do it." But when you're a child, you just go for it. And I think taking a leaf out of that, you should make room for playing somewhere in your life. Maybe it's just dancing to music that you really enjoy, or maybe just learning something new hobby, or how to talk to people that you don't normally talk to. But putting some time aside to accept the process of play as an adult, I think is a really good way to get into it again.
That really leads nicely into my next question, and I want to touch on the perfectionism aspect of it again. But what is your creative process, and what's the most important part of it?
Most important part for me is probably I've just touched on there is the exploration. I love the messy middle. I love when I'm in the middle of a project and I'm allowing the process to just flow, trying loads of different ideas, trying things that won't work as well as things that will. So you kind of find different paths when you do that. Things you don't think work out end up working out. And I love when I'm with clients and we have a call before we work together. We spend time connecting and talking about what they do and don't like, but also learning about their personalities and how I make sure that they're involved in the process. So together we explore ideas together, we bounce ideas back and forth. My email is very open and they'll just drop ideas in, and I love the creative part of exploring their ideas and how we can fit them into the brief. A bit of reflecting during that messy middle as well. I love exploration. I think that's probably the most important part of my process.
And how do you balance allowing yourself to explore that creative process and those new ideas with the creeping perfectionism? Because obviously that's quite a hard balance to find. I find that as a photographer.
Yeah, I think perfectionism is an interesting one. I don't think it has to be perfect. I think if what we are exploring together, what we're exploring together as when we're working on the project, will bring about the solution that we're looking for, and that's perfect. That's great. And then I don't really look any further than that. I've managed to let it go. I think it used to hold me back quite a lot, and perfectionism can make you think you can't do something, or makes you think something isn't good enough, or makes you think someone else won't like it. And I've managed to let that go. I think thankfully don't view perfectionism as something that holds me back anymore. I just, as long as we both enjoyed the process and we've got the perfect thing for them at the end of it, that's wonderful. And I think that's as far as I go with that.
Oh, that's amazing. And you say that you're not necessarily held back by perfectionism now, you've kind of been able to let it go. What facilitated that happening?
Failing. I think, yeah, I say that, but realizing that not doing something because I was scared it wasn't perfect was failing myself, my dreams, and the people I was working with. I think to have the confidence to go forward with an idea, it takes that practice. But I think I was able to let it go because I enjoyed the process so much more without it. And I enjoyed the creativity so much more without it. It was that dark cloud of, oh, is it good enough? Is it good enough? I didn't want to hear that anymore. I love what I do. I love people I work with. Perfectionism doesn't have a place for that. So,
yeah. Do you remember your first project where that didn't come into play and you were like, you completed it without any worries and just enjoyed it was the first time you kind of completely enjoyed the whole process of it?
Maybe not the first one, but I remember it caught me by surprise when I realised, you look back in retrospect and you're like, oh, I didn't even realise I wasn't focused on perfectionism. And it was, do you want to know about the project, or do you want to?
Yeah, no, tell us. Tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a lovely project, and we were working together. Which one should I pick? Let me think. You haven't caught me off guard there. Oh my god, I'm ready. Don't be sorry at all. Don't be sorry at all. I did a website for somebody, and I just got lost in their brand. They loved their brand so much. I got swept up in it as well. And the joy that came about with that project with them, it was just felt amazing to work on. Every single page of their website felt fantastic because they were fully involved. I was fully involved. We got loads of ideas together. And then when we launched it, it just felt wonderful to have it out in the world. And then I looked back and thought, I didn't even think about perfectionism at that point. We just loved working together. And it happened by itself without perfectionism sitting on my shoulder going, double check that. Are you sure it's what you want to do? It wasn't there because I was fully 100% caught up in that process. And I think probably since then, I was like, well, that's great. I think I'll just not have perfectionism on my shoulder anymore. Thank you very much.
What advice would you give to someone then about finding those projects and allowing them to find those projects that they get fully excited about so that they don't get inhibited by things like perfectionism and worry about what others will think and things like that?
I think every project can be that. I think, but for myself, it's about the people I work with. And I don't know if maybe that's a shift of focus for people. I think if you have that connection with somebody, the process comes naturally. So I think just being authentic to yourself when you're meeting new people and new clients or taking on new projects, just be honest and be yourself.
Yeah.
And flow with it. If an idea comes up on the phone, on the call, we'll talk about it. I don't like hold back till the first email or anything. We just chat.
Yeah.
And we're definitely work intuitively a bit more. if you're feeling that something isn't sitting right, then voice that. And I don't think there's any shame in saying if something's not working, because you can feel if the energy in a project isn't quite right because you're not enjoying it. The client can tell you're not enjoying it, or they're not enjoying it, or something isn't clicking. That'll be holding you back. But I think when you're fully immersed and just working with somebody and you're connecting well and the flow is there, I think it's easier to just fully enjoy the process.
Amazing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that's got me, like, because I agree, like, I've been, more recently, the photography projects I take on, I've become more selective, and I've become, and not just selective in, like, when someone approaches me, I say yes or no, but even coming down to, like, my marketing and who I'm trying to attract, because I know that when I work on projects where, from a photography standpoint, where I'm being given full creative freedom, because they're trusting me to create the product that they want, and I'm allowed to be my best creative self, I can create the best work for them, and that gets me really excited, and I then don't worry about the results because I know I will produce great results. Next question, and this is from Becky, who was my last guest. What was what she terms sliding door moment? So she described it a bit as like you're kind of approaching an event or a point in your life, and then it's like you suddenly got clarity, and that was the direction you chose to take, and that's why you chose to take it.
Do you mean in terms of career, or I'm laughing because my career path is crazy? Okay.
You choose. Like, yeah. Whatever you're comfortable talking about. Like, probably career, but if there's other aspects to it and you're happy to bring that in, do.
I used to be a teacher, so I haven't, but then before teaching I used to do design as well, so I have had maybe 3 careers in my lifetime. Sliding door moment maybe was, although I love to teach and I was very much involved in my class, and I just love teaching, it's wonderful. I taught primary school, learning from the children how free they were and free-spirited, and watching them learn and grow without any hindrance, and they were just brave, and they were always like failing and getting up again. And I think I missed aspects of design and art that I used to be more involved in. And I was art coordinator for my school, and I was able to put together curriculum and ideas for the whole school. I wasn't actively being an artist or creative myself. The teaching's wonderful, but it's a very full on job, very full on occupation. So I didn't have any free time to actually explore that. And lovely COVID hit, we were homeschooling, and I was in and out of school and teaching from home and teaching in the classroom. And I was able to find pockets of time where I thought, I'll just draw something, I'll just quickly grab this, quickly paint that. And I missed it so much. And I think one day I was walking on the beach and it was summer holidays and we were coming towards September, and I was like, I need more of this in my life. I really miss this side of myself. And I went to see my head teacher just after lockdown ended. We were back into school in September, and I was like, I think I'm going to be leaving this year. I just need to explore something. I need to explore something before I go back into school, and then I just didn't go back. I took my year's sabbatical, and then I was like, no, this is what I'm ready for now. I think it very much it's like a chapter. So I love teaching, but I closed that chapter and I'm back. I'm in this one now. And it's nice to be back in the field again because I did miss it. I did train in design and then I moved into teaching and back in design again. So it's quite nice to come full circle, but you don't know what you've missed until you're not there anymore. It's like coming home again, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got no way to come back. So I think sliding doors moment probably was that day on the beach just after lockdown ended. I was like, I think I'm going to do a little switch, I think.
Amazing. Where do you draw your biggest inspiration from when you're like sitting down to do a project? Where does the inspiration come from?
Gosh, depends on the project. A lot of the time nature, because I'm surrounded by it. Sometimes other projects I've worked on, sometimes from the client themselves. We'll have connect on something else before we meet up, like cats or recipes or whatever it is we've talked about, and then we end up working together. And because I know them a bit better, there's been inspiration just taken from them. Gosh, I don't know, past artists. It was a creative job. I can't really. It's a hard one to answer because it comes from everywhere. It comes from everywhere. Everything that I've seen and visited and talked to, and conversations I've had, and
yeah. As a creative, what's the first thing you do when you're not feeling very creative? So, like, obviously, like having a creative job, it requires you to constantly be at the top of your game when creating things for clients. But then sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes it can get a bit much, and suddenly you've got no ideas, and you're like,
it's that block, isn't it? That wall.
Exactly. Like, how do you deal with that, and how do you overcome that?
I like to take myself out of my space. You've probably heard that before, but just to be somewhere different.
Yeah.
Completely unrelated to my work. So I might just go for a walk on the beach. I'm outside. I'm seeing people with their dogs, seeing people swimming, or I'll go out with a friend, have coffee. We'll talk about whatever comes up, and we're chatting, and then my mind settles back into creative mode. I think sometimes your brain just needs that break.
Yeah.
It's like doing mundane things is fun as well. So fun, she says, when you're organising cupboards or drawers, but like that sort of activity where it's not related whatsoever. Your brain's taking a short break, a nice rest, and then you come back to it and you feel refreshed a bit more. And I think, just removing myself completely from my desk and my situation to something completely different helps to reset myself.
Yeah. I think there is also something to be said for letting your brain get bored.
Yeah, I think so.
Because
a lot of like Zen work, isn't it? Like you see them just sort of cutting bonsai trees or making sand patterns, and things having that peaceful, restful moments for your brain to just do not nothing, but very much one thing.
Yeah, it's very monotonous almost, isn't it? Like it's like all my best ideas come when I'm like in the shower, or I've just taken the horse for a hack or something like that. It's when I'm doing something completely unrelated, because that's when it's almost giving your brain room to think.
Yeah,
isn't it?
There's a science behind that, isn't there? They said that people's best ideas are in the showers because your brain because you're resting, and all you're doing is you're washing like you have done every day. You know how to wash. You don't actually have to think about how you wash yourself. So you're just doing it without thinking. It's muscle memory. Yeah. So your brain isn't really thinking, and it just goes, "Oh, got a thought for you." And it drops it in because your brain's completely settled and not really focused on anything.
Yeah. I'm thinking. I've got a good question, but I'm like, do you ever have to do anything creative for yourself outside of the work you're doing for your clients?
Yes.
What is it?
Because I love creativity, and I think my work is very much focused on my clients and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I would say infuse my work, my style into that. But sometimes I want to just do something that I don't do as a business. Because it's like we were just saying there about your mind resting. It's just nice to have something else to think about. And you can ask me what I do. I like to bake, make a few cakes. I don't cook, can't bother that, but I like to bake.
Yeah, no, I'm the same.
I like the cakes. Like cakes or pie cake.
Yeah.
They're always cake. And I love doing things like I like to paint. So which I don't do for clients, like canvases and murals and wall art and things. I love to paint. So I will just get my canvas out and my paints and go for it. A bit of playtime. Like I was saying before, making time for play. That's when I kind of sit and play. I put the cloth on the floor, put a canvas down, and I don't know, mess about with paint for a while. It's quite nice. Bit of music on. It's lovely.
Yeah. I do think like projects like that are for yourself are really, really important, particularly when you do work in a creative industry. Because I think otherwise,
finding that time's hard, isn't it, Beth?
It's a really hard balance. How do you make sure you find that time?
I don't make sure, which is bad. I do try and fit it in pockets of time, but if I'm particularly busy on projects, it gets left to the side, you know, until I have maybe a free half day or an hour or so. Making time for it is probably something I'm working on still as well.
So as you're working on it, it's again, that's another thing that is very much a process, is finding that balance.
Yeah.
What tips or pieces of advice do you try to implement to help you find that time? Is there anything in particular?
Bit of time blocking. I've been experimenting with time blocking this year for my like my diary when I'm booking calls or certain projects in. And I try and creep in a little box of time just for myself. Every now and then I do take it off and go, I need to quickly work on that project, and it gets taken out. But I'm trying to be more disciplined and say, no, this is my block of time for me.
Yeah.
It's just as important to look after yourself, isn't it? So there's like a box of time in my calendar that's just for me. It's very open. I don't have anything planned in there necessarily. It's just a bit of time that says, off my desk, do something just for you.
Yeah.
But keeping hold of that's tricky. That's my balance. That's trying to find.
Oh yeah, it's personal. Like trying to find that balance is really, really difficult, and I don't think I've still found it yet.
We're all looking for it.
Yeah. Of those kind of creative projects that you've done for yourself, which has been your favourite? Are you able to tell me your favourite, or is it too hard a decision?
Because some stuff, like perfectionism question, isn't it? Pops up there, bit of resistance. So some stuff you just do because you want to do it. It's not particularly very good, but it feels good.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not very good seamstress. I don't sew very well, but I really enjoyed making. Like I made a patchwork quilt for somebody.
Yeah.
I really love doing that. I mean, it wasn't the best. I'm not that good at textiles, unfortunately, even though I respect anybody that does textiles. I had a go, and it was for family members, that's fine. So it didn't have to be wonderful. No one else saw but them. But I loved doing that. It was so much fun because it's something I didn't normally do. And I was like, this is great. I was putting like different collage of materials together and a bit of cord here and whatever there, a bit of sequin there.
Yeah.
Although it was like very silly, I really enjoyed it. So that's probably one of my favourite ones.
Yeah.
I can't show you, thankfully, because you got it.
I think my mum would agree with that, because she one year she made me, my sister, and my sister's husband patchwork quilts. She made all three of us patchwork quilts, like for various. I think mine was for birthday / going away to uni, just because she just wanted to make one, and it might have been for her birthday, but it was also a project Jess and Mum wanted to do together. But then, in true Jess fashion, she got distracted, so Mum finished it off. I think is what happened. And then her husband, well, his boyfriend at the time, Connor, was for his birthday. And Mum and Jess just loved going into all of the shops, finding the different different textiles and patterns and stuff, and just finding a way to complete it. Like,
I bet it's beautiful. It's so much fun, isn't it? Like just exploring something different.
Yeah. What's on your list of things to try?
That I haven't done, or
or you've not done for a while that you want to get back to.
Creativity wise, that type of thing. I've tried most things, which is great. I have got most things. Glass blowing. I've never done glass blowing. I'd love to have a go.
Yeah, it does look fun, doesn't it?
It's scary, yeah, very hot, but really, I'd love to have a go because that's something I haven't done yet. I've done glass painting, but I've not done glass blowing. I'd love to have a go at that, like glass fusion and such. I've done mosaic before, but only did it once. I'd like to do mosaic again. That'd be lots of fun as well. I'll try anything arty, anything creative. I'll try it because I love going to galleries and seeing all the different media that people are working in.
Yeah,
sculptural work. Like, anything sort of 3D.
That is cool. I remember you telling me about was it a coffee shop mural or something you did when we met at Alice's podcast? I remember you telling me about that, and that just sounded absolutely amazing.
It was a sign for them. It was a coffee shop. They had a canvas made, so it wasn't on the wall. It was for the wall, but wasn't on the wall. It was a canvas for them.
Oh, cool!
Brilliant. We still have it, which is lovely. I see it when I go in. I did that. It's one of mine.
There's something really satisfying about that, though, isn't it? Like going into places that you've worked, or meeting up with people that you've worked with and seeing your photos or your creations there. Like for me, it's like when people post images that I've taken of them on social media, I'm like, I took that photo, and I get like,
you still get that kind of joy. Oh, I did that.
yeah,
mine.
And there's some sort of almost validation in there, isn't it? Of oh, I do actually know what I do. I am good. Like people like my work.
That joy, though, I think you know you brought joy to that person.
Yeah.
So people will see your photographs and be like, oh, Beth did this photograph for us and I absolutely love it. And they'll share it with people because they love what you've done so much.
Yeah.
I think having that connection again is just so important. It's so lovely to just, it feels good for both of you, I think. It feels lovely.
How do you then navigate, maybe you started a project and you got very excited about it and the client's excited about it, and then for whatever reason it's maybe not turned out as you'd hoped, or the joy in the process of creating for the client has weaned. How do you like navigate that so that you're still producing the work you can for your client?
I'm grateful I haven't actually come up against that.
I
can't answer it. Sorry, I can't answer that one. But I think if let's say I work with somebody and maybe the passion's dwindling or whatever, or they're not feeling it or whatever, I'd have a conversation. I think so much to be said about just being honest with people and talking it out.
Yeah.
But I haven't got any experience behind, thankfully, I'm very grateful, behind that one. But I would open a conversation up, definitely. So there's no point going on with something that isn't feeling right for either of you.
Yeah.
I think it's, and so there's no harm in it. I think everybody's different, and it's not until you start to work with somebody do you realise whether or not you're happy with the process.
No, I've had that experience once on a shoot where my expectations going into the photo shoot were and the picture they'd painted were very, very different to what the reality of it was, which then made getting really creative quite difficult because they weren't. So it was someone who they were hiring a horse for the shoot, and they'd made it out like they were quite an experienced rider doing quite a lot, but it then ended up being a shoot more for vanity rather than genuine love of the horse or something like that. And I was just like, I'm finding it really, really hard to connect to this, to be able to create the photos, but I'm here now, I can't leave, I've got to just work through it because they've paid for the shoot.
How was that?
It was difficult, but I did it, and I was able, and it worked out all right in the end. But it was very, very difficult to separate my negative feelings to then of the situation to then be allowing myself to get creative, because in a lot of ways the creativity was then hindered.
Does that change your process then after that point? Has it changed how you approach projects?
That was the point where I was like, okay, I've got to be a little bit more selective about people I choose. And I need to have a phone call or a face-to-face conversation with people before I choose to do the shoot with them. And it's really important that I make sure that me and my clients are a great fit.
Yeah, of course.
So it was weird. Weird's probably the best word for it. But I'm glad I went through that because I did. And also it stretched me really creatively as well, because I had to really think on my feet more so than I normally would.
Good for the muscles and the mind.
Yeah.
You can look back at it, like you said, you think, oh, well, because of that experience, I now do this.
Yeah.
Or I now think this way.
How do you stretch yourself creatively?
Do you mean for, like, how do you mean for my project?
Like, for, like, stretching yourself and challenging yourself so that, like,
I try difficult, like I try things I wouldn't normally try, I think. So you get like a lot of like free briefs on Instagram and such. You'll try a few there, and that you wouldn't normally go for. So they're not your ideal client at all. They're just, but you see a brief and go, I'll never work for them, so I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah.
Because there's like certain types of industries that I've not worked with. I probably would, some of them do or don't align with me. So I'd have a go, and it makes your mind think differently.
Yeah.
That stretches you a lot creatively. People, what would they be looking for? They're not my ideal client, so how would I approach this?
Yeah.
And you do things like that, like practice briefs.
I've seen a few as well of like, there's like a few designers going, if Coca-Cola was a sustainable drinks brand or something like that, and how would they redesign it and things like that.
I love stuff like that.
It's so interesting to watch. It's so interesting to see how different people's minds work, like to see how they come up with it. Because reality,
it's really nice.
What I would create would probably be completely different to what you would create, for example, if we were given the same brief with the same.
But I love that. I think that's great about creativity, because there's not one way to do it. It's so open, as we were saying before, and it's so accessible because it's so open, and only you can be creative in your own way. And I think I love that. I love seeing like the one brief that goes on Instagram grid, and then 50 odd people post something, and none of them are the same. It's the same brief.
Yeah.
None of them are the same. And I love that. It's such a window to somebody. I think it's great. Yeah. I love the variety we get in creativity. It's brilliant.
I know, it is. That's a good question. I've just thought of. What's the benefit that creativity has brought you?
Benefit?
Yeah. How have you benefited?
Joy. Pure joy. Joy. I don't know. That's a silly answer. I don't think it is.
Like,
it's a good answer, because we're here to live and we're here to enjoy. And I think where you find that joy is very important. I think it's something to be nurtured. So maybe people just hate being creative. That's fine. But what do you love? What brings you love? What brings you joy? I think without that joy, life can be a little bit monotone. Blank. So creativity, joy. I think it's probably the first word that came in my head, and it rings true in my heart as well. Definitely makes me happy. Lots of people are happy. You get to share with people. I mean, we're connecting now, you and I, about creativity. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then I'll talk to a friend of mine who's an artist. She's completely different to me. She's a mixed media artist, and her work's incredible. I would never do what she does, and she wouldn't do what I do. But the conversations we have over art, creativity, are wonderful, because we have different opinions and different experiences. And
it's like, I've got friends that
joy.
Yeah, and I've got friends who'll be like, oh, I saw this and I thought of you and thought you'd really like it. And a lot of the times it's stuff that I'd completely have not thought of at all. And I'd be like,
it's like not on your radar, is it?
Yeah, and it's like you say, it brings that connection. And
absolutely.
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think it's fun. So earlier on, you were saying about encouraging people to kind of just explore and play to kind of help themselves get creative. What advice would you give if they were like, but where do I start? Like,
just where would I start? Okay, what do you already love to do? What do you already enjoy? It could be anything, I suppose. What do you enjoy? I like reading. Okay, can you pick one word and write 3 words to go with it? Or what rhymes with your dog's name? I love my dog. What's your dog called? Jack. Okay, 3 things that rhyme with Jack.
Yeah.
Or maybe you love watching films. That's great. You got a camera phone? Yes. Record your family doing something. You made a little film. That's your little film. Now you just made something. So what do you already enjoy doing? Or what do you already enjoy in your life? Person, subject, an activity, and then go off that. So pick something you already like, and then see where it takes you.
Have you, this sounds stupid, where has that led you when you've done that before, where you've just been like, right, this is what I find I love, I'm doing it, I'm just going to see where it takes me, like where has that led to? Obviously doing what you're doing now, but is there anything else
anything else? Ooh, okay. I love dancing, and I used to dance when I was younger, and then obviously with school, and that was the end of that. So I've always loved to dance, and then a friend of mine said, do you want to go belly dancing? Yeah, why not? See, that it was so much fun. And I know of all things to say, belly dancing makes me laugh as well. But it was so much fun. It was just a very fun class, and I would never have gone, never have thought to go. So I'm quite shy, and you don't want to be like. But I met so many interesting people at the class as well.
Yeah.
And my friend loved it, and I loved it, and yeah. So the first one that came to mind there was belly dancing. So there you go. Just say yes.
That's a good piece of advice as well.
What about you?
Just say, oh.
Just say yes. I think it's fun. You're here to live. Just say yes.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest one for me was, so when I bought my camera on a whim.
Ooh.
So I never intended to be a photographer. I always wanted to be a vet originally, and if the vet route wasn't going to work out, it was going to be a zookeeper or something like that, something working with animals, or probably horses, but mostly animals. And then I was like, oh, in sixth form, vet wasn't going to happen. I'd kind of fallen out of love a little bit with the zookeeper idea. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Hartbury College, which is where I went to university. I'm going to study horses. I'm going to go into horse and rider research and really study the sport. And I'll do equine sports science. That gives me the human side and the equine side. Be really well-rounded. I'll do that. And then me and a friend were both taking a gap year. And we decided to go to Bolivia for a month and work in a wildlife sanctuary. And I went, I'm going to buy a camera and just use that to document my time there. Like, just because I don't want to, I don't know what was going through my mind, but I was like, I used it as an excuse not to have to take my phone so that I could really enjoy it. I literally bought a cheap 20 quid phone that I put a Bolivian SIM card in so people could keep in touch. My parents could keep in touch with me if I needed, but it just allowed me to completely enjoy the experience and not have to worry about being on social media or anything like that. And then whilst I was there, a more experienced photographer was also volunteering, and in our free time, we just got the cameras out. He was giving me lots of advice, and I realised I was quite good at it.
And you loved it. I assumed you loved it as well. You enjoyed it.
And it was just like there's something so. I think empowering is probably the right word. Like being able to bring people into the way that I see things.
Yeah.
Because often I've never not always been the best with words and like articulating myself, but there's something about photography that you can just bring forward and people can see what you're seeing and how you see it. And I was like, okay, I'm quite good at this. And then that kind of catapulted me down the photography route. So I then still went to uni knowing full well that I wasn't going to do anything with my degree. Like,
when you say that, but you still work with animals, don't you? You still work with horses.
I do a lot of equine stuff, and then a lot of I photograph a lot of equestrian sport, and then within the social media management side of things, I have used my degree there's been an equine physiotherapist previously and things like that. So it's not been like completely put to waste. But
I don't think anything's ever put to waste. I think
there's always something to be learned from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes where you are now. So all the things that you've done are part of your path, and where you are now is because of that, I think.
Well, yeah, and
I don't think anyone ever will.
A lot of the job opportunities I've had since university or even during university were because of people I'd met whilst attending. So if I'd not gone, I'd never have met them, and I don't know, who knows where I'd be now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's only in retrospect that you see the value. You think things aren't right, so you give it up, or you stop doing something because you think there's nothing in it, and then something comes about in the future, and you look back and go, because I did that thing. It's because I met that person. It's because I heard that conversation and I joined in.
Has there been anything?
I think it's really interesting. I think people.
Has there been anything significant for you that you've been like, oh, I've got this project, and then it turns out you got that project because of something that happened previously or someone you met?
Yeah, I go to like events and things just to meet people and experience events, and often things come about because I've met somebody on that event, or because I get a project through word of mouth from somebody else because they've heard me talk about something, they've told their friend, and then they'll get in touch with me.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of value in conversation. I think that connection with people is very important. And nobody's in Ireland, it's so nice to to talk to people and share and connect on something on the same level. And usually I find, it's normally through conversation. I think, it's because I talked to them at this whatever I'd been to. They get in touch, say, you're a friend of mine from this event, or my partner told me about this and you were there, or we heard you speaking about this. It's nearly always conversations, I would say, mostly conversations.
What's one of the most interesting conversations you've had? That is then...
In terms of creativity?
Yeah, so that has then fueled something creative based off that conversation that you wouldn't necessarily have expected it to.
Yeah, that's a good question. God, I can't know how to answer that. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my brains are like memories. What can I remember? Oh my goodness. Do you know, I'm stuck. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I wouldn't have normally done like pop-ups and events for stationery and art prints if someone hadn't asked me to. So somebody said, will you create me some art prints for like Earth Day and the environment? And I said, yes, no problem. And then I did a pop-up for them with these art prints. So it's not something I'd ever done. I didn't really do it. And it was great because through that, I got a client who asked if they did client gifting. They wanted an art print for their clients. So I ended up getting a client sideways through that. And I never would have thought to have this pop-up would then bring me a design client. But it just goes to show.
Like, do you do prints yourself now? Or
I do. I mean, I do them for clients. So no, I used to do art prints. I used to have a part product, part service based, but I've very much niched down. I don't do a lot of products myself now, but I do design products for people. So they'll come to me and say, I want to put together a Christmas whatever for my clients. Can we put something together, like an art print or a set of Christmas cards, corporate Christmas cards, or usually art prints, to be fair. Yeah. Or I've got a quote I always use in my business. Can you make it an illustrated quote so I can gift it to my clients when I'm finished doing a job? I'll make that for them. So it's nearly always for clients now. I don't make anything myself just because.
Right, last question. And that is, what's your question for the next guest? I'm not going to...
Okay. I think, one of them I was going to ask, I think you asked me, so I don't know if I can use that one. How about, when do you feel the least creative?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'll try that one, I think. You've asked me to answer that, aren't you?
Now you said that, why don't you answer your own question as well?
No, you're on. Oh, no. When do I feel least creative? When do I feel least creative? It's boring to answer, but when I'm tired. So even when I'm sad, I'll feel creative. Or if I'm very much led by my emotions, so if sad, happy, whatever, I'll feel creative. When I'm tired, I've got nothing to give. And nothing's going to budge me but sleep.
Yeah.
So it's probably a very boring answer. I probably feel the least creative when I'm tired. Because even if your mind's busy and you're stressed or you've got a lot going on, I still find there's a spark of creativity there to sort of express it somehow. Either in writing or in painting or in drawing, just to get something out. But when it comes to tiredness, it's almost like I'm in a void of just nothing left to give.
Yeah.
And my mind's just no creativity today. We're not working on that level. We're just going to go to sleep.
See, I think for me, it's when I'm tired. Like you say, when I'm tired, you just don't have the brain power to be able to think about. You can't even think about getting upstairs to go to bed, let alone being creative.
I'll just sleep here on the sofa.
Yeah, sometimes it is that level. But also, I think like when my creativity, whether that be because of a client brief or something I've set myself to do, is just put too much into a box. And it's too rigid, and it just there's no
give.
Yeah, there's no leeway to then test boundaries of what creativity means and what we could do with that brief. And that's when I'm like, that's when no ideas come, because I'm like, it's too rigid. No, not happening.
I think it's important to let it go at that point. I think people feel they have to push through, and I feel the best way is not to push through that.
Yeah.
You've got things to do, fair enough, but if your mind's not coming up with anything, it's telling you just need a rest. Step back, do something completely different, and then go, right, I'll take an hour or whatever and come back to it later. I don't think there's any harm in that. And I think people feel they have to push through this wall. I just don't think it's very productive to do that for anybody.
I also think there's no harm in as well in if you're having a conversation with a potential client and it's just on paper it looks great, but the conversation or the ideas just aren't flowing when you're having that conversation. I think it's okay to step away before the project starts. You don't have to, just because something in theory should be right doesn't necessarily make it right. And you should
No, I absolutely agree. You've got to feel it. It's got to feel right. And like you say, it could sound like the perfect person on paper, and you go, "That's the one for me." But if you're not connecting, if that's no spark or flow there, then best for both of you to just say, probably not best time or not best person for you. And you go your separate ways.
I'm all questioned out. I don't know about you. Before we finish, where can we find you on social media, website, online, offline? Let us know where.
So the website is wildbirchstudio.com, and on Instagram it's at Wildbirch Studio, but it's wildbirch.studio.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful to chat.
Yeah, no, definitely. Right.